Find the slope of the tangent line, that means the derivative, to this curve at the point pi over 4 comma 1. So basically we want to find the derivative, that's dy over dx, and evaluate this at pi over 4 1. X equals pi over 4 and y equals 1. So let's find the derivative of this curve. Since x and y are together and we cannot isolate y, we need to use implicit differentiation. So here the curve is tangent of xy equals y, that's the curve. Differentiate both sides with respect to x. Okay, differentiate, I'm using prime notation. Find the derivatives of both sides with respect to x. So it's a tangent of something, that means we need to use the chain rule. So derivative of outside tangent, that is secant square of whatever we have, that's xy, times derivative of inside function from the chain rule. Okay, from the chain rule. So tangent secant square xy times derivative of this inner function equals y prime, that's dy over dx, or just y prime. Okay, y prime is derivative of y with respect to x. So here we can do further. So this is x times y, there is no sign, means x times y prime. So we must use the product rule. So here is secant square xy, product rule, that is a plus sign in the middle, derivative of first factor times second plus derivative of second factor y prime, which is dy over dx, this is not 1, times the first factor x equals y prime. Next we need to isolate y prime. So here is y prime, here is, this is inside here. Okay, so we cannot just move other terms here. What we have to do here is we need to distribute secant square inside. Okay, so secant square to 1y means just y, and secant square to xy prime. Okay, let's distribute. This is how we can separate y prime term, and we need to combine with this y prime. So secant square xy times y is y, let me write in the front, secant square xy, plus similarly x y prime, this. So x y prime secant square xy is equal to y prime. Okay, we are trying to isolate y prime, and here is y prime and here is y prime. Okay, so let's move this over, that means subtract xy prime secant square xy from both sides. Okay, let's subtract this, so that would be negative y secant square xy, we subtract it, so it's gone. So y prime, subtract means minus xy prime secant square xy. Now from these two terms we can factor y prime out. Okay, so y secant square xy equals y prime out, 1 minus y prime out, so x secant square xy. Okay, now we can isolate y prime, so all we have to do is divide both sides by this. So y prime equals y secant square xy over this quantity, 1 minus x secant square xy. Okay, do not cancel anything. This is derivative of the curve, derivative of y at any x value. Okay, this is the slope of tangent line at any point xy. But if we read the question here, we need to find the slope of tangent line at pi over 4 1. So x equals pi over 4 and y is 1. That's what we need to plug in here. Okay, now at pi over 4 1, this y prime, slope of tangent line, is So y is 1 secant square x times y. X is pi over 4 times 1, pi over 4 all over 1 minus x. X is pi over 4 times secant square xy, pi over 4 times 1, pi over 4. Okay, let's evaluate this fraction. 1 times doesn't count. Secant pi over 4. We know that cosine pi over 4 is root 2 over 2 or 1 over root 2. Same thing. Root 2 over 2 or 1 over root 2. And secant is reciprocal of cosine. So secant of pi over 4 is just root 2. Okay. So secant of pi over 4 is root 2. We got a square here. So root 2 is square, which is 2. Okay. Secant pi over 4 is root 2 square. 2. On the bottom, 1 minus pi over 4 times same thing. It's 2. Okay, 2 over, here we have to simplify, 2 goes twice. So this is 1 minus pi over 2. 1 minus pi over 2. Okay, we cannot subtract, these are all like terms. The best we can do is on the bottom, we can make common denominator. 1 is 2 over 2. So 2 minus pi all over 2. And 2 change, flip. So 2 goes on the top. So 2 times 2, 4 on the top over 2 minus pi. Final.